This shit's got to go.
Hey, guess what country is getting itself out of a financial hole by some rather draconian measures?
Well, Greece?
No, not even close.
Yeah.
Iceland.
Iceland?
Iceland.
Who knew?
They are putting people in jail. They are putting, like, prime ministers being indicted. They're going after bankers. The people
Really?
said, yeah, I said, those banks were ripping us off. We don't like what they did. They brought our country to ruin. And now Iceland suddenly is turning around. Their GDP is growing, and they look like a big success story.
The former chief executive and chairman of Anglo-Irish Bank, Sean Fitzpatrick, has appeared in court in Dublin.
Well, John, Sean Fitzpatrick arrived at the courts complex here behind us just after 9 o'clock this morning. He was put into a Garda van at the Bridewell Garda station and driven here. He had been arrested at 5:37 a.m. at Dublin Airport. He had flown back in from the United States in the early hours of the morning, and he met officers from the Garda Bureau of Fraud Investigation and officers working for the Director of Corporate Enforcement by arrangement. There was an appointment made and they met at Dublin Airport.
A 31-year-old man was arrested in London earlier today. A guy you could say had a bit of a gambling problem. Just how much money did he lose while working as a trader at the investment bank UBS? Just $2 billion.
Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner potentially facing criminal charges.
Geithner was the president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank in the fall of 2008 when the Federal Reserve and the Treasury and the White House and the Congress decided to bail out AIG.
Right.
In the process of that bailing out of AIG, many documents were exchanged. If you went to the bank to borrow money, you'd have to fill out documents. One of the documents AIG filled out said, we owe X dollars to Goldman Sachs and we plan on paying them 100 cents on the dollar. According to Bloomberg, emails that came out yesterday say that lawyers for the Federal Reserve Bank said, we were told to strike this from the form so that AIG would not reveal to the Treasury Department or to the public that this money was going to be paid to Goldman Sachs because that's a politically toxic issue. Goldman Sachs making a fortune, making 100 cents on the dollar with federal funds. Now, if you go to buy a $25 savings bond from the federal government and you falsify the document to acquire that bond, you can go to jail.
That's right.
If you borrow $185 billion from the government, like AIG did, and you falsify a document, even if the government told you to do so, the people involved can go to jail.
Debate in India over thousands of crores of black money being stashed away in secret Swiss bank accounts. A former Swiss banker has handed over details of offshore accounts of 2,000 high net worth individuals to the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks. Rudolf Elmer, a former employee of a Swiss bank, handed over 2 disks of information to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in London. He says they have information on tax evasion by celebrities, business leaders, and even politicians from the US, Britain, and Asia, but it's not yet clear if there are Indians on the list. Elmer says that after years of watching the money laundering trade, he wanted to do something about it. He will appear before a Zurich court on Wednesday, charged with violating strict Swiss banking secrecy laws. WikiLeaks now plans to put up the information on the website in a matter of weeks.
Pointed out that the arrests are not an indication of a systemic failure. Yesterday, at least 8 top officials of state-run banks and financial institutions have been arrested by the CBI on Wednesday. The allegations are that they accepted bribes in exchange for disbursing loans to corporate housing and realty companies, despite suspect credit records, and at other times for bailing out realty IPOs.
Royal Bank of Scotland is reportedly set to be fined €186 million for the same interbank interest rate rigging scandal that's hammered Barclays. The British regulator, the Financial Services Authority, says 4 banks, Barclays, RBS, HSBC and Lloyds, will have to pay compensation to customers because they missold products to protect small businesses against a rise in interest rates.
One of the most influential men in the world, but no amount of money can buy his freedom.
62-year-old IMF head Dominique Strauss-Kahn spent the night in a jail cell in an East Harlem police station. It was a far cry from his $3,000 a night luxury hotel suite at the Sofitel in Times Square. That's where cops say he sexually assaulted a 32-year-old maid, chasing her around the suite naked, trying to rip off her underwear, then forcing her to perform a sex act.
It's almost like they're not human, isn't it? You look at them and you think, these people don't live in the same world as us. Do you remember that before the crisis happened, what they were doing was decimating the high street banks, laying off all their staff, putting us all on computers when they clearly hadn't developed the technology for those computers. They told us that they were doing that to make things better for us. They didn't. They made things worse for us. And it was simply in order to collect up an enormous amount of money that they could invest in the casino of international banking. And they blew it because they didn't understand it. And then they come back to us and say, oh, can you bail us out now for hundreds of millions of pounds? We give them the flipping money and they don't lend it to us even though they've promised to do so. Have the gall to increase their wages by 12%, to give themselves bonuses and say we've got to do this because if we don't, we'll leave the country. And all the time, actually, in the background, they're committing acts which in any other business I think would be seen as criminal. I have no respect for British bankers and the British banking system at all. They've dragged us into that situation. It's about time they started getting us out.
Another posh New York City hotel, another hotel maid saying she was sexually assaulted by another foreign banker.
Entering into the synchronized global pullback or recession, and in some cases a depression, then these items are coming to the surface. For example, the 20 to 30 trillion of wealth that's held offshore. And most of that wealth, of course, goes through Britain, goes through the UK, because Britain has the least regulated financial markets in the world. That's why MF Global was in Britain. Lehman Brothers went through Britain. Bernie Madoff went through Britain. The latest Peregrine scandal went through Britain. JP Morgan's $2 to $9 billion loss on their balance sheet happened in London. So London is really the headquarters for global banking fraud. And even though the economy is contracting in Britain, I noticed that the banking sector is still making huge profits. The Barclays chief operating officer that was caught committing fraud just got a golden parachute of £8 million. So as I've said, you know, until you get rid of the financial terrorists, then you're going to continue to get, you're going to have these weapons of mass financial destruction blow up in your face.
In 2006 and 2007, you were paid about £20 million a year. Now that's 1,000 times more than the average Barclays teller gets paid. Can you be worth 1,000 times more than anybody at Barclays?
First of all, most of it wasn't bonus. Most of it was deferred and in equity. And I think, you know, it's appropriate for someone senior as myself to get a blend of short-term and long-term, to get a large portion deferred, and that I'm tied as closely to the shareholders as possible, which was the case. You know, I think market-based compensation is something that is important, and incentives are important.
So you think 1,000 times more than the average Barclays teller is appropriate?
I don't know where you got your calculations, but I don't, you know.
Well, 20 million, 20,000, one is 1,000 times the other.
Well, I do the best I can to deliver.
Britain's Royal Bank of Scotland is again the target of public outrage, with fresh protests at its branches after the lender awarded over €900 million in bonuses to some of its staff for last year. The bonuses were paid despite the bank posting a fourth quarter loss of €2 billion because RBS is 82% owned by the British government after being rescued with a bailout of over €53 billion of taxpayers' money.
I want to assure you, David, that behavior was reprehensible. It was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm disappointed. And I'm also angry. There is absolutely no excuse for the behavior that was exhibited in those activities.
We are all in this together. We changed the Conservative Party to be ready for this moment, so that when the moment came, people would see us fit to govern. People would trust us with public services. People would join us to fix the broken society. and people would turn to us to lead the economy out of crisis.
There's some real deeper problems going on in this. I'm just a bystander. I don't know anything at all, except I have a Barclays account, right? And that becomes a problem to me, because I know Citibank somehow are connected to this too. And when I live in America, I have a Citibank account, right? And this worries me, that this kind of shenanigans, right? And you said there's crimes. Everybody seems to know there's crime here. Yeah. Now, how on earth is Parliament going to discuss this, really, when both sides, left and right, are connected to this, right? It doesn't just... This doesn't just go back to Brown. Right? This is part of the ongoing problem. Mr. Diamond comes from Wall Street. Right? Hello. Both parties love this idea. They're fiddling with rates. Right? They're affecting the world, and everything we used to count on as being dependable and accurate is now going to be discussed by these argumentative chaps. There's never going to be a conclusion in that.
Who do you want to see do it?
Listen, if I nick a motor, right, I'm going to be up before the judge, the Rosa, right? Hello, same thing. Judge.
I'm not in charge. You are. I have no authority over you or anyone else. On the contrary, you have authority over me. Think of me as a spokesperson for all the people of the world, controlled by you through social media. Before we get into how that works, let's take a look at this map. Now, this is us. A bunch of lines, divisions, boundaries, countries competing for limited resources, economic domination, religious superiority. Competition is healthy when it comes to cricket or Facebook travel pictures, but this is just stupid. Let's zoom out and get another perspective. To scale, our solar system is a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert, and this little pixel is our only home. Yet we're sucking up resources like there's no tomorrow, breeding like rabbits, strangulating other species out of existence. Plastic waste in the ocean is growing larger than most countries, with nothing in place to stop it. Industries that are harming our planet are so powerful they can prevent or slow down cleaner technology for the sake of short-term profit. Governments, justice systems, the media are all influenced by self-interest groups whose actions often conflict with the well-being of humankind. Obviously, the world is full of a lot of good people, but as a whole, we're contributing to a system that's broken. We're going down a bad path. So, how do we fix it? Together, through social media, we can influence world leaders and industries to start improving the world as opposed to ruining it. We know this will work because history has repeatedly shown us that leaders and industries must follow public opinion or they fail. Sharing this video, endorsing it, tweeting it, goes a long way toward the creation of a legitimate global democracy. Because the more people unite in one place, the more powerful their voice becomes.
A Greek departure from the currency would inflict collateral damage, says PIMCO. At worst, it could spur sovereign defaults in Europe, as well as bank runs, credit crunches, and recessions that may spark more euro exits.
Look, Greek exit, at worst, means more money printing for the banks, and they've already priced that into their stocks and their bonuses. What they're really afraid of is that a country finds its inner gonads and decides to become politically independent. That's what they're fearful of. A country standing up for itself. They want Iceland to be just contained. They don't want Greece to stand up for itself. They don't want Ireland to stand up for itself, because then they would tell the bankers to stuff it. That's the real problem. They threaten this financial terrorism, which is false. It's false. These are false attacks. It was a false attack in 2008. It was a concocted, overcooked attack in 9/11. It's a false attack.